Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and I am live. I'm also trying to work a few things out here as I go through the various social media outlets and letting people know that I am doing the show. Works pretty well this way. Although hopefully next week we'll get ahead of the curve a little bit. So I'm over at Gab right now, and I'm just letting the Gab people know. Give me 1 second there. Get my images all together. And let's do that. I think we've got it. Boom. All right. Let me go into the stream to see what's going on. Do we have? Well, we got some people in here. Yeah, right on. I think we're good. Let's see what we have. Chat is back. I think it's the same box that we used last time. There's well, we got Joan in the house. There we go. A little bit of that right there. Okay, Andalucia. Don't know why it's posted. How to rewatch. So I'm gonna hang out for a little bit and just see if people are gonna show up. Christy's here. What's going on? Man, my eyes are really blurry tonight. I don't know what's up with that. You got blurry eyes. Okay, hey, I've got a really good really good astrological show ready and available for you guys tonight. I have put hours and hours and hours into working on this. That's not really true, but years and years of working on this and hours actually putting it together to get all the charts together, do all the research and all the things that kind of go along with it. So yeah, I have put some time into it. I'm going to get into it. I'm going to look at tonight together. We're going to explore the Pluto and Capricorn kids because I've been thinking about them a lot lately, and I've been thinking about what a challenging time this must be for them. A super challenging time. And I'm gonna try to get into what I think they're about. We're gonna look at charts. We're gonna look when Pluto and Capricorn hit. Well, that's really important because it's not just Pluto and Capricorn, but it's also other planets and where fixed stars were at that time. And that's gonna take us all the way back to 2008. I'm gonna look at a couple of other charts that are related to the Pluto and Capricorn cycle, specifically 2011 and 2014, which I think are critical periods of time. So we're going to look at those, and we're going to get into some of the challenges they face and why I think a lot of what we're going through now has to do with them. It's not just every generation that's getting reset. I think that this is a generation that is targeted for a number of reasons, but I think they're targeted, and I don't think the quote unquote powers that be want to let them get to a state of maturity. And I think that these Pluto and Capricorn kids, I'm just calling them Generation A, Gen A, because they're the ones that reset everything. They're the ones that this whole thing is going to get started. It's going to start over with Gen A because we've reached Gen Z. The Zoomers are Gen Z. And I don't think they're childhood's end. I like the Zoomers. I think they're really interesting. And, once some of them burn through their ideological kind of excess, which is what Sagittarius does, Sagittarius needs to kind of get through to the other side, and they will flip. Some of them are already philosophically like dialed in. There's a young guy here in this town who is 20 years old. He's got the maturity of a 30-year-old, homeschooled, has the right values, and he's setting up his own server farm so that he can create a service like an actual place where people from the hill country or in the hill country can hang out and talk and meet. And it's a 20-year-old young man. So Gen Z is really interesting. I booked a reading today with a young gal. She's 17 years old, born the same year as my son. And a lot of the Gen Z kids have found me through XCD Hat Guy, my friend Grant, whose videos have garnered millions of views. Some of you might be aware of him. He's the guy that young guy that he talked about and was able to articulate how and why the fourth dimension exists. Really interesting stuff. And he's got a really interesting story. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Grant is probably very late sort of millennial. I think he's around 26. So when I met him, this was back in 20. I met him in 2014. 2014. Yeah. So he in 2014 or 2014, he was 17 years old. So yeah, he's definitely 1997. He's right on the edge there. Right on the edge, because the Gen Z kids come in 1996. That's when we first start to see them. He's right on the edge. I'd have to go back, but I think he's like final degrees of Pluto and Scorpio. Anyway, he became kind of this this beacon and this light for some of the younger Gen Z kids who would come along, like say 98, 99, 2000, 2001. And he would talk about things in a very philosophical manner that they responded to. And he created quite a stir when all of a sudden he disappeared. Because I didn't know this about him. I didn't know he had such a, I don't know, big YouTube following. It was years later when he kind of got back in touch with me and he told me, hey, I used to put up these videos and I would get 300,000 views on them. I'm like, what? Where did that come from? So then we kind of reconnected and I started to watch his videos. I'm like, you are Mike from Stranger in a Strange Land. I haven't told him that, but that's who he is. And he was like this prophet that showed up. He was like a flash of light, flash of light, flash of brilliance, a lightning strike of illumination. And there were these young people that were really looking at him and listening to him. And I don't want to get into his personal story because he went through some very, very deep and intense changes. And all I can say about him is I love him to death, and he's got great courage, and he's got a wonderful person in his life who is definitely a Gen Z kid. She was one of those kids that looked up to him, and when he went MIA, she went to go find him. She tracked him down, and she was the person. She was like his Beatrice, and pretty much saved him. And they're together now. They're married now, and I still stay in touch with them. And now he's returning, and it's been interesting to watch his return. And it's fascinating what the human spirit is capable of. And along the way, he got into some challenging habits, especially with eating, and he gained a bunch of weight. Like when he was younger, he looked very different. He looked kind of You look like an alien in a good way. You know, if you could imagine what somebody who was ethereal and would look like an alien, this kid kind of looked. He had that otherworldly, wise kind of, you know, gaze, and his delivery was very calm, very measured, and he asked questions. He was sort of going through this Socratic process, and then he wound up, and he won't mind me talking about this. He wound up gaining a lot of weight because of certain prescriptions and medications that, you know, he was being told to take, and now he's sort of dialing back and tapering off on these things, and he just lost 50 pounds. Not that he's doing it to appease people who were used to him looking a different way. He's doing it because he wants to get healthy, and it's a fascinating story. Anyway, so he actually did a video on astrology and me on his channel, and it was really an interesting kind of reaction that young people had. Some of them who were like straight science people who loved the kind of scientific, brilliant, uh, mathematical, algebraic, uh, physics kind of mind. They were like, "What are you doing, man? Astrology is a fucking pseudoscience," and you know they gave him a lot of shit. But there were other people who were much more receptive to the message about astrology. And I think I've read for about four young men, and now a young woman who've come through literally that channel, figuratively that channel, and each one of them was really impressive, really impressive. And I had a session with one of the guys last week, just turned 20, and he's way ahead of the game. Not going to college. He's basically started up an online advertising marketing company, and he's making bank, and he's doing well. He's doing really well. He's studying his real estate license so that he can translate a lot of his kind of algorithmic uh, brilliance, you know, with creating campaigns and doing all that stuff, and translated it into something for real estate. And I'm like, his goal, he's like, I want to work until I'm about 30, and then I want to stop. I want to be done. And you know, this guy has planned this thing out. He's on his way. He's got a trajectory, right? He's 20 years old. And the same thing could be said for the young guy that lives in this town here. He's a little more politically minded, a little more sort of communal and altruistic in some ways, but still very defined goals, very defined vision, which is kind of noteworthy with Pluto and Sag kids. They're interesting, really. But tonight we're going to talk about the Pluto and Capricorn kids. I'm going to get into them tonight. I really feel for them. I feel for a lot of the Pluto and Sag kids, but they've got kind of a, you know, they're you don't really want to fuck with them. You don't want to fuck with them. Like, they are in some ways tough as nails, you know, and they're truthful. They're truthful. This Bad Baby, you know, Bad Baby is Cash Me Out. Bad Baby from Dr. Phil. She's a Pluto and Sag kid. She is cold as ice and tough as nails. And she just started the fans only site, turned 18. She made $6 million, like in the first 48 hours of her fans only site. I mean, you got to be kidding me. So these Pluto and Sag kids, they're going through a hard time. I've read stories where some of them have committed suicide because of the lockdowns. It's really not great. And some of them are being targeted with the gender dysphoria stuff, the transgenderism, the precursor to transhumanism. Some of them have been targeted, and some of them are actually going through what we're witnessing now. And I think some of that has to do, if you break them down and look at them astrologically, all of them have some connection to the sign Aquarius from start to finish, right? So they come in 1996, and by that time, Uranus is in Aquarius. By the time they're done, which is 2008, the last group has Neptune in Aquarius. So what we know about Aquarius is that it is one of those signs that's kind of omnisexual. It's very not real defined. It could be kind of anything, right? Plus, the opposite of Sagittarius is a sign Gemini, or even at this point, like the constellation Gemini. That's about duality and flipping between, left and right, and male and female, those poles. So that's kind of their astrological dark side, is this duality thing. And they're kind of going through it. They're really kind of going through the last couple of years, since the poles shifted. Really since last year, early 2020. It was May 2020. And so that generation has been a bit challenged with that south node starting to go through Pluto at its various degrees that they were at. I guess the later ones got hit first, right? The people who were born in 2006, 2007, 2006, 2005, because that's how the nodes operate. Anyway, yeah. So, but they're getting through it, and that's a generation that is going to. And I've talked about them before. Zoomers, Gen Z. This is a generation that is going to reset the world philosophically. That's what they're here to do. They're going to reset the world philosophically. And they're going to, in some ways, be the millennials' kind of worst nightmare, because they don't take any shit. And it's kind of like how would I describe it? Like the millennials will be their baby boomers. And I know that there's this beef that goes on with baby boomers and millennials. There's a beef, and some of it is valid and some of it is pumped up. But what the millennials don't know is that at some point they will become the baby boomers. And this is what happens with generations in time, provided the majority of them are still here, and that's debatable at this point. When we get into the infusion and what's going on with the infusion, I love saying that. I get to channel the head of the New York City or New York State NAACP. Speaking of Sagittarius, Andy Cuomo, all the senior center death camp stuff is just going away. It's all going away because now there's another accuser. Oh boy. So, it's just piling on. Somebody else got groped by him. Oh, somebody else had, got their tongue invaded by his forked lizard tongue. And these are the crimes of the state. They're nothing. They're really nothing. You know what else is really interesting? I'd have to go back and look, but I would bet you if I spent, I don't know, a half an hour, I could find, oh, sure, absolutely, I can do it right now. But they lag a little bit, but they're kind of in the same ballpark, right? Like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. Yeah, Bill Cosby had all of his stuff come out earlier, and he wound up getting sentenced, if I'm not mistaken, right when the Weinstein, however you want to, I think it's Weinstein. Brett and his brother like to say Weinstein. So that was happening. And I bet if I searched around a little bit more, I could find another example. But what you have is duality. You have the black and white thing going on. And we have a similar thing happening now with Deshaun Watson, who is a quarterback in Houston, plays for the Houston Texans, who's got, I don't know, like 20 massage therapists who have all filed civil suits against him because he forced them to do things after, he would get massages from them. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing. This guy would get all. He's got all these different massage therapists, these masseuses, and he would go on Instagram and meet them. He wouldn't go on, I don't know, some sort of holistic health website or anything like that. Can I do background here? I might be able to, I might be able to do. I might be able to do a little something here. Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can do this. Hold on. I can choose a virtual background. I can do this. Virtual background, none. Why can't I do virtual background? Let's see. I can't do virtual background. I don't have a green screen. I guess I have to upgrade. Damn it. They have video filters. I could do a video filter. I don't want to do a video filter though. Today's Easter, right? I could do an Easter bunny filter. Should I do that? There we go. How's that? It's just seasonal, right? It's a seasonal thing. I think if I wanted to go a little more, I don't know, mysterious. I've never really looked at myself as an Easter bunny before. This is kind of interesting. Not sure I'm totally into the look, but the filter's on. Then I got this. This is kind of cool. Kind of like that. Little green hornet kind of action, right? Little green hornet thing going on there. Oh look, hey! I wonder if you could use one of these during a Zoom meeting and use this filter. And I wonder if people would know. What if I did the show like this with my virtue mask on? Oh yeah, it's that cool. I really want a virtual background though. Let me get rid of this mask. How do I get rid of it now? Uh-oh. Can I get the video filter off? Oh no. Would I have to do this for the rest of the show? Answer's no. I'm a little disappointed. I really wanted a virtual background. Why can't I get one? Come on, Zoom. Studio Effects. Oh, what is this? Oh, I can do, okay, I can do what? Mustache, eyebrows, lip color. Whoa. Man. I guess you could kind of go, you could play with your identity now in Zoom, apparently. I wasn't aware of that. I don't really want to do that, though. What I really want to do is a virtual background, but I guess that's not happening. I guess it ain't happening. Oh, well. So Deshaun Watson doesn't get his massage therapist. I wanted to look at his chart. What's going on with Deshaun Watson? He's a Virgo, by the way. And he's got like 21 women who have filed civil suits. One just brought her case to the Houston PD. This guy's like he's like a serial massage receiver. What would you call that? And I know what he's doing. He's going on Instagram. He's finding hot-looking masseuses, scheduling appointments with them, getting massages, and hoping like hell that he could get a little something on the side. Okay, and maybe even, I don't know. Would he pay him? I don't think he'd pay him. This reminds me of a story. So I think I've told before, but some of you are new to the show. Anyway, welcome to the show, Sunday Night AstroLive. We're going to get to astrology. I promise. I promise. Okay, I'm just waiting for people to show up. In the TV land, the media, they go like this. So there was this massage parlor near my apartment in Austin, and I would go in there. I used to have a bad back, really bad. I mean, it's not great now, but it used to be worse. And I remember one time I took my mother to this place because she really needed a massage, and I set her. And I had gotten a massage there before. It's actually pretty good. It's a pretty good massage. So I went back again, and I'm getting this massage, and I noticed that this woman is spending a lot of time down by the inner part of my thigh. I'm like, she's a Thai woman. She's a Thai woman, and older too, older Thai woman. And so she spent a lot of time, like down by the crack of my ass and the inside of my thigh. I'm like, well, what's going on here? Oh, I know what's going on here. I can kind of feel where this is going. And then she asked me if, I want the hand. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. And I think she was a little, I don't know if she was crestfallen. Because, I mean, at that point, I mean, it's business, right? It's just business. So she's going to just say in her mind, well, shit, there goes $45. I did ask how much the hand was, by the way, because, inquiring minds need to know. I'm a Scorpio rising. And the hand was $45 extra. In Germany, by the way, no, I'm not going to be in Germany. So anyway, I declined. I declined. Number one, I was seeing somebody. Wasn't that conscientious of me? And number two, it was like it's kind of like somebody's grandma. So, did she feel bad about it? It's like, oh, I just lost out on $45, or was she like cool with it because I gave her a tip anyway? I don't know. It was a weird situation. But Deshaun Watson, if he knew about that place, he could have gone there. But he'd have to go from Houston. But he was all over the place. He was in like Atlanta. He lives in the South. I don't think he lives in Texas. So he was going through. He'd go through these Instagram accounts, and I don't know what would take place. Maybe proposition them for who knows. Who knows. I don't know. He's got 21 counts of these women that have come forward, and his pro football career at this point in time is kind of fucked. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's happening simultaneously with Andrew Cuomo. They're happening simultaneously. And again, we're into some astrological territory here. So we're talking about Gemini. Two men, one's black, one's white, one's younger, one's older. So we're into that sort of that Gemini effect, that Gemini territory. Anyway, Cuomo, unfortunately, is going to be they're just missing the target, and they're missing the target on purpose, purposefully. They don't want any of this stuff with what happened in the senior centers or the elder care homes or any of those things to come up, and the numbers are staggering. I mean, we're talking close to 15,000 people, and a lot of those people were on some form of retirement or some form of pension, and I'm sure a number of them are connected to the state. And I don't think it would be too far off the mark to say that there's a real interest in eliminating these people. A lot of these people, the older people, are Pluto and Cancer, and they've been around a long time. And I've talked about this. This is a group that has mostly evaded the pernicious effects of vaccines because they came of age during a time when there weren't as many vaccines. They may have gotten one, maybe two. I remember when I was about 4, I took the vaccine on a sugar cube with my parents. I don't know what it was for, but they took it too. So I know that they got that thing, whatever that thing was. I think it was polio or something like that. Polio, giving you a little polio sugar cube, like you're a horse. Anyway, they're around. A lot of these Pluto and Cancer people are around. They're, they're like they're the crab, like they're clinging on. They don't, they're not as sickly as some of these other people in like their 70s. They're kind of the early boomers, right? Boomers being born in roughly 1944. 19. I think the first boomer kind of shows up 42, and then it goes retrograde, which is what Pluto does. But they really come on around 1944, and these are the people now that are in their mid 70s. If you count 42, I could be in their mid 70s, right? So, and this is a generation that a little bit more vaccinated, a little bit more vaccinated. I think they all got. I think most of them got the polio vaccine, although the polio vaccine shows up in the 50s, like around 52, 53, right around there. So a lot of the boomers got the polio vaccine. And, those early batches of those vaccines were horrible, horrible vaccines. One of them was had the monkey virus, or the monkey gene. They also had this woman from Italy who was fucking insane, and there was like some cancer remnant in there. It's basically everybody's getting a clone of the same shot. And boy, there was a huge rise in cancer, wasn't there? Huge uptick in cancer. Yep. So, but a lot of those Pluto and Cancer, speaking of Cancer people, they're still around. They want them gone. Most of them, by the way, are also conservative, and a lot of them vote. I know for a fact because my mother is one, and she votes, and I can't tell you how many of her friends are still around, and they're all in pretty good health. Although some of them are starting to get the infusions, so they want them off the books. It's like, okay, this is total reset time. We want to get these people off the books. They vote far too conservatively for us. They're a drain on the system economically. They take up, time and space with medical issues. Although probably healthier than some of these other generations who've been eating shit food and crap food most of their life. And then there's like the stuff with the pensions and Social Security. Like they want them off the rolls. So there, you could clearly see during the absolute shit show of last year that they wanted to isolate this group. They wanted them isolated. They wanted them behind closed doors. They didn't want any contact with their family, because what does that do? Well, it gives them a sense of hope, and it helps their immune system. And do you remember where the first cases of all the COVID stuff were happening? In Washington State. Guess where? Yeah, in a nursing home. A nursing home. And they just started dropping like flies, theoretically. I mean, that's what they were saying. We don't always know clearly what the facts are with some of the stuff or the numbers are, but I think it's fair to say that they probably had some people who wound up intubated and put on the the modern day version of the iron lung. They were intubated, and once you're on intubation, it's very hard to get off intubation. So anyway, Cuomo is gonna, they're gonna try to throw all this. Oh, you're a bad guy. You're a naughty guy. You're a naughty man. And he's not going to be able to have to really face the consequences for what he has done, which is unfortunate, because he needs to pay the piper. I'm sorry. If I was somebody who had a parent or a grandparent in New York State and they died on his watch, I would be fuming. Now, some of those people, who knows? No accounting for human nature. Some of those people might, actually tip him out. Oh, hey, I got the inheritance. Here's a little on the side. Thank you. We've been waiting for this for about 5 years now. Wow. You know what? I bet you there are people that are like that, and I bet you some of them might have actually communicated that to him. You never know. Who knows? But that's the way humans are like that sometimes. I want to get into a little more astrology here. Now we got Charles Barkley. I don't know if you saw the clip of Charles Barkley, but it's a great clip. He was on TNT. It's interesting. You have Ernie Johnson. They have these three guys on TNT. TNT, Turner Network Television, right? TNT, and they've been running. TNT has had the NBA on TNT for a long time, and the guy who's been the focal point of that for a long time is Ernie Johnson, and then they have three ex-NBA players that are up there with him. All three of them are Pisces, so it's quite interesting. You have Charles Barkley, Pisces, Kenny Smith, Pisces, and Shaquille O'Neal, Pisces. And what's also interesting is that when they do the playoff run and teams lose, they have this big graphic, and like when they're out of the playoffs, it's called Gone Fishing. And of course it's Gone Fishing because all three of them are Pisces. And it's Shaq and Chuck and Kenny all on a fishing boat, and players from other teams are on the boat with them. But Charles Barkley came out. He just really nailed it. He really nailed it this last week. And he was talking about Black people and white people. And he said, you know, I know there are a lot of really good white people and a lot of really good, but you know what? I can even play this thing. Why don't I just play it for you? I mean, I think he would say it a lot better than I can. So let me play this thing for you. And again, I'm going to bring this up because he is, it's the Aquarian part of Charles Barkley. It's the Aquarian piece. And he just totally nails this thing. And I'd like to get it without any commentary, because I you know, people do this. Now I'm the guy who's doing the commentary. I'd have to go to Twitter. Let me go to Twitter. It's easier. Find him. He was trending for a while, and then, oh boy, we don't want Charles Barkley to trend. That would be not a good thing, because he's dropping truth bombs. There we go. This is it. Now I'm just going to give you the pure, undiluted truth from the Sir Charles. What was his name? At one point, he was called the renowned mound of rebound. The around mound of rebound. That was his name. The renowned mound of rebound. They had great nicknames back there. Nobody has any cool fucking nicknames anymore. They don't. In pro sports, nicknames used to be a big deal. Baseball had great nicknames. Great nicknames. You had Mr. October, Reggie Jackson. You had the Say Hey Kid. You had Jim, Catfish Hunter. You have Jim, Mudcat Grant. I mean, just all kinds of nicknames. Sutton, Sam McDowell. And if I spend enough time here, I could go through a lot of them. Mark the Bird Fidrich. Baseball doesn't have nicknames anymore. Nobody has nicknames in baseball. Because guess what? Some group might get offended. And there were even like lesser players who were interesting. They may not have, but they had, like there was a guy by the name of Jack Brohammer. They called him the Rabbit. I don't know why they called him the Rabbit. And he was an okay player. Anyway, basketball players used to have nicknames too. Daryl Dawkins was called Chocolate Thunder. Chocolate Thunder. Plenty of nicknames. All right, let me get into Charles Barkley dropping some Aquarian truth bombs on TNT here. I'm surprised they didn't say sorry. We've got to take a commercial break here. So let me tee this thing up. All right, so there's Ernie Johnson. I think he's adopted like, I don't know, 15 kids or something like that. Beat cancer. Everybody loves Ernie. Everybody loves Ernie. Okay, so let's get in with Charles. Hold on. You know what I got to do? I got to go back to my. We're back here. Oops. 1 second. I got to go back here. Let me stop the share. I got to go back in and set the volume. Here we go. All right, volume set. Let's go back in and listen to Ernie and the crew. Here we go.
But the one thing I took out was, man, I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. I truly believe in my heart most white people and black people are awesome people. But we're so stupid following our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And their only job is, hey, let's make these people not like each other. We don't live in their neighborhoods. We all got money. Let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make rich people and poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class. I truly believe that in my heart.
Shared that news, how painful it was.
Yeah, but the one thing I took out of that piece was...
Okay, so that's really interesting. So Ernie wants to talk about how painful it was. It's all about registering pain so that we can all get into some kind of pseudo emotion. So we can all approximate some kind of a pseudo emotion. Okay, so here's Charles. He's going to flip the script one more time. Let's go, Chuck. Here we go. I think was this the final four?
Man, I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. I truly believe in my heart most white people and black people are awesome people. But we're so stupid following our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And their only job is, hey, let's make these people not like each other. We don't live in their neighborhoods. We all got money. Let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make rich people and poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class. I truly believe that in my heart.
Shared that news, how painful.
Let's scramble the middle class. Let's scramble the middle class. Yep. All right. Let me go back to Twitter. There we go. Charles is speaking truth right there. He's speaking truth. That's it. Now, he is, again, 1 degree Pisces, and I guess I could throw his chart up here. I don't have the time for him. I don't have his birth time, but we can just get a quick glance at his chart. I think it's worth looking at, particularly because he's going through his second Saturn return. And Charles has, in the past, said he wanted to run for public office. I'm not sure that would be in his best interest in some ways. I think he's better in this role. I think politics, even me, like at this local level, I'm kind of loath in some ways to dive into the political thing, but it's it's the stand here. This is where the line is. This is the Maginot line. So let's just take a little glance at his chart. So let's see what we got here. Right now, Saturn is conjuncting his Mercury. That was a Saturn conjunct Mercury kind of moment. Clarity, gravitas, and really getting into this defined sort of Aquarian reality, or this defined Aquarian state, which is rounding off the duality, sounding the call about people not getting played by these politicians. I mean, this is a great moment for Charles. I think it was a great moment for Charles. And he's got this Mars in Leo, which is retrograde. And I know that Charles has done a few things that he's regretted in the past, which he's kind of battled a little bit with alcohol in the past. He got into fights and bars, and so but the thing with things like a Mars Neptune square, you get to work those things off. You get to work through them. Saturn Neptune square, again, get to work through that instead of blaming institutions. And don't get me wrong, institutions deserve some blame. They deserve some blame, but a different kind of critical assessment, like not blaming them because they supported this group or that group or this group over another group. No, they're institutionally flawed, and this is what ultimately they have metastasized to, which is the power game, the divide and conquer game, the duality game. So Saturn Neptune square, that's about healing that. And issues with the father, 9 times out of 10, you get people with Saturn Neptune squares, they've got father issues. The father's gone, the father is inconsistent, the father is weak, the father has issues with addiction. You'll see that with Saturn Neptune squares. So he's getting ready to go through his second Saturn return. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to him. Well, his first Saturn return started in 1991, 1992. And by that time, I think he'd been in the NBA for a while. And I think by that time, he was done with the Philadelphia 76ers. He became a free agent. He was kind of living in the shadow of Michael Jordan. And not that they played on the same team. And he signed a huge contract with the Phoenix Suns. That was his big money contract, at least back then. And Charles played with the Suns for a while. And I remember in 1992, just how dominant he was. He was incredibly dominant. 91, 92, they played the Warriors. This is the Warriors with Chris Webber, also Pisces. And Charles Barkley was, I think the Warriors I watched one of those playoff games, and the Warriors were called for every ticky-tack foul in that game. Like, it was very hard for them to win. But Charles took it over. I think one of those games, I think he scored like 51 points. So that's him going through his Saturn return. It was him going through his Saturn return. And then he got into some of that stuff in Phoenix. Saturn was hitting his sun at the time. And that's when he had to go through kind of a major revision of his life. So anyway, I'm glad that he said what he said. I think it's important. It's going to be interesting to see how the right will embrace him. Oh yeah, great, yeah. But they'll do it because it's kind of expedient. And I think there's some people in the so-called right who will get it. But they have to leave their position on the right in order to get it. They have to, sort of turn around and go, okay, well, we have more in common with this group than maybe we think we do. And what do we have in common? Well, what we have in common is that this other group who has pitted us against one another has done a really good job of doing that. And maybe we could reach across the aisle and stop this family feud, although it's going to be very difficult at this point. And I'm not sure Charles Barkley saying this on national TV is going to close the duality gap. I'm not sure that's going to happen. That said, I think he's going to wake some people up. And I think some people who might inherently lean into this dualistic trap might step back a little bit. You might say, you know what? He might be right. He might be right. Maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe I need to step back a little bit. But I don't think he is going to single-handedly change this major gap and major division that we're in. It is pretty wide. It is pretty damn wide, let me tell you. But this is a good first step, and I really, hats off Charles Barkley. The other thing, too, it's interesting just in terms of the chart. I've got a balsamic moon right there in Capricorn, maybe just on the edge of balsamic. But what's interesting is he has this, what they call Promethean Mercury, meaning that Mercury is behind the sun. Technically, when he was born, Mercury was behind the sun. This is how astrology works. Technically speaking, Saturn was also theoretically behind the sun. You get these orbits going on. So what this means is that people that have Promethean Mercury, and that's usually a case, by the way, of a Mercury retrograde. And a Mercury retrograde thus then goes direct, sitting back there. So the individual will throw themselves into experience. Right? They will steal the fire, and then they'll figure out what happens next. That's how this works, with the exception of Saturn being there. Saturn introduces a new wrinkle. If Mercury is ahead of the sun, it's called Epithean Mercury, and that means that the individual thinks through what they're going to do. They think about it, they observe, they look, they say, well, should I do this? And how did this affect that person? And, it's going through the reasoning faculties. Not with Charles. Charles is going to be out there. Now, in order for him to get here and to voice what he voiced on the weekend, Saturday, he had to work through some Saturnian issues, right? Because Saturn is sitting here between Mercury and the sun. And at this point, he's not going to speak out of authority. He's not going to do that. I guarantee you that, because he's been played. I guarantee you he's been played. If I sat down with Charles Barkley and had him for a 60-minute interview, and we got on pretty well, and I think we probably could, I would say, hey, look, are there any examples in your life where you trusted somebody and you thought you were right, and everybody else was kind of enabling you to think you were right, but at the end of the day, you realized that you weren't right, and really what you were doing is you were being propped up by groupthink. People were enabling you on a psychological and emotional level. I would bet you he would say that. And I think that this is where Saturn comes into play, because he's not going to speak out of a place of non-authority. Not now, not at the age of, what is he, 50, 57. He's 3 years younger than me, 2.5 years. 58. He's not going to do that. He is not going to do that. He's gone through all of this Saturn square material to Neptune. So when he's going to talk, it's going to come from here to here to here. Boom. Just this. It's not a stellium, but just this trinity. There's a lot more going on in the chart as well. But again, hats off to Charles. And he can speak with authority. When you have a Mercury Saturn square, you can speak with authority. And this is a nice orb. It's not too close, but 9 degrees. Boy, it's cushy. It's a cushy orb. And currently, with the Jupiter is around 23, 24. So it's on the other side of Saturn, right there. transiting. It's going to be interesting. Also, that he's got that Saturn opposition now going on with Mars. He has it in the chart, but it's even closer now. And I wonder if what he's going to hear about this. I wonder what he's going to hear about it. But Charles doesn't give a fuck. He never has, really, in a lot of ways. I like him. Good job. Way to go. Okay. All right. I want to get into a couple of things. I want to talk about what's happening in the world right now, which I think is important. We're really a couple of heartbeats away from a major global war. I don't know if you guys are paying attention here. We're a couple of heartbeats away from a major global war. I'm going to talk more about it tomorrow on 15 Minutes of Flame. But I've been tracking what's going on in Russia and what's going on in Ukraine, and it's big. Okay, and I've been talking about this for a while now. Been talking about it for a while, and we have Chiron and Aries. I'm gonna bring Russia's chart up here in a bit. We're gonna take a quick glance at Russia's chart. The Capricorn, when Russia basically became a new country again, it invested heavily in the sign of Capricorn. So we're going to take a look at Russia's chart. But they have closed down this major bridge. Let me show you this bridge. This bridge is something else. This bridge is like 13 miles long. It's enormous. It's a bridge, but then it's got this like, here, let me show it to you. It's called the Kerch Bridge. This thing is something else. I mean, it's not much to look at, but in terms of its scope, it is really, you can see it. See that? Look at all that. Look at that. So this is the main, and here's another look at it. This is the main thoroughfare, the main artery. Here's an aerial view. Look how long this thing is. Right? Look at that. That's significant. And here's the map that it connects Russia with Crimea. This is a major artery, and the Russians have just shut it down. They've just shut it down. Here, you can see the bridge right there. See it? Bang. Right, and Crimea is, this is a port, and Russia kind of wraps around Crimea. And if you look here, you can see the bigger kind of picture with Ukraine over at the top. So this is a really significant deal. And the Russians have brought a huge amount of armor to this area, and not just to this area, but all around, sort of this area here, right there. The Russians have lined a huge amount of tanks, and I think there was actually something that went off last night, if I'm not mistaken. So this is kind of a big deal. This is a big deal. Now, on the so we also have China inching closer to Taiwan. Remember, we are in this Gemini phase where things happen in twos. There's duality. So would it be impossible for an event to break out in Ukraine and in Taiwan simultaneously? The answer to that is absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the United States is firmly behind NATO, who is also backing Ukraine. Remember, Victoria Nuland and her husband, they were primarily responsible for the Ukrainian color revolution. Of course, Victoria Nuland baked cookies. As you know, when they, after it's all said and done, hey, I got cookies, welcome. And meanwhile, we're just going to continue to shell Donbass and blow people the hell out of there so we can go in and take over. And this has been going on for a long time. And I find it interesting that Putin really didn't push back during that period. That was, he either was getting orders not to do anything or took a tremendous amount of restraint. But he did draw the line at Crimea, and supposedly Crimea had an election and said, hey, we want to be with Russia. Now, whether they did or not, and that was real, of course, the people who want to control the narratives in elections will tell you that that wasn't the case. That they did want to be a part of Russia, that they really want to be a part of Crimea, I'm sorry, Ukraine, and they got jobbed, right? Well, we'll never know. But if I was Crimea, I probably would want to be with Russia. Just saying. Just saying. Because the Ukrainian government was, well, all governments are corrupt. We know that. But the Ukrainian government is really corrupt. And they kind of created this like weird brown shirt style fascism inside of Ukraine. It was like kind of heavy, very reminiscent of the Third Reich. Well, they were Bolsheviks. That's why they did it. Anyway, that's happening right now. And why don't we check out Russia's chart? Let's go to astro.com and we'll do a quick glance. I know they have Russia's chart in here. If not, I think I might still have it. But we'll just oh, look at all the czars. Let's do this. Let's go to which one is this for? This is for 862. No, that's not the one I want. I want the no. Let's see. Jessica Adams. I think this is it right here. Astrology Weekly. Let's check this out. I'm pretty sure this is it. Yeah, this is. Yeah, that's the chart. Okay, here we go. Let me bring this up and we can get a sense as to what's going on with Russia. So 1991, Russia decides we're going to have a new country, and we can see how much they invested in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn Sun, Uranus in Capricorn, right there. Neptune in Capricorn, right there. Mars in Sagittarius, Mercury in Sagittarius. And then we have a little Pluto and Scorpio action, millennial. Russia is a millennial country. And then we have Venus in Scorpio. Maybe that's why, isn't Edward Snowden a millennial? Maybe that's why I went to Russia. Anyway, very interesting chart. We got a bit of a bundle with Saturn and Aquarius. So Russia's going through its Saturn return. How about that? Now, it won't fully go through its Saturn return until the end of the year. Okay, the end of the year. That's the chart from 1917, when the Bolsheviks came through. 11/8, 11/9 is when they really sealed the deal. And you can see where they have Uranus in Aquarius. Of course they do. Of course, it's revolutionary. Anyway, this is from 1991. And to me, Russia, it's a very complex place. But you can tell they're playing the long game. They're playing the long game. And these are the guys that set up cultural subversion. Ideological cultural subversion. They wrote the fucking book on it, okay? And they know that it takes at least one generation to turn everything around. At least one. And that's what they're working on. Hence all of this Capricorn right here. So they know that for them to have people that were, say, born during this period of time, 1991, they're starting to come of age now. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that these people are going to, jump through the hoop, but think about Pluto and Capricorn, which we're going to talk about tonight. Pluto and Capricorn conjuncting Russia's sun, and that was what, 2008, 2009. Interesting time, very interesting time for Russia. And basically, that's when they weren't having their Pluto return, but they were going through a major transformation, major kind of cleansing, and a long-term revisioning. So we could basically say, even though this chart starts in 1991, but they had Yeltsin, and they had a lot of weird stuff before Putin came on the scene and took charge, which, if I'm not mistaken, was around 1995, I think, right around there, 94, 95. I remember seeing a book at Richard Grossinger's publishing house, the Warehouse. It was a book on judo by Vladimir Putin. He actually published it, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, but it's this time in 2008, 2009 that's going to set the course for where Russia is going and where they want to go for the next 30 years. They're working, I can tell you that right now. They're working on the reversal of cultural subversion. And their goal is not to, I don't really think they want to go to war with Ukraine. I don't think that's what they want to do. I think they're playing a long game. I think they want to build up their resources, which they've been doing. And remember, they've been under sanctions, big time sanctions from the United States since Obama was in office. Russia started getting sanctioned when Obama was in office. That's back when Saturn started going to Sagittarius. And every time that's done that, the relations with the United States and Russia have shifted until the next Saturn and Sagittarius cycle comes along. Remember, the last time Saturn was in Sagittarius, that was the prelude. It was the prelude to the fall of the wall. It's like, okay, well, guess what? You're going to be a free nation, and we're going to shake hands. We're going to welcome, what's his name? The guy with the splotch on his head. And we're going to welcome him with open arms. And prior to that, you go into Saturn in Sagittarius. That's where you get into things like the Cold War, Nikita Khrushchev, we're going to crush you. Whereas every time Saturn goes into Sagittarius, and it goes into the United States 12th house, the relation with Russia changes. So when Saturn and Sagittarius came around again, it was, okay, they're the bad guys again. They were the good guys for a while. Now they're the bad guys again. And even though Donald Trump pumped the brakes on that a little bit, they still have been the bad guys. And I remember looking at these changes. I spoke at this event in Virginia Beach for purpose. It was a great little get together. And I remember, well, what am I going to talk about? I said, I feel like the relations with the United States and Russia are going to change. Well, let me get into it. Let me break this thing down. And I broke it down. It's like, oh yeah, Saturn and Sagittarius, the 12th house. And the United States has Mars, I think, in Gemini. So this is the Mars return for the US. So you get that Saturn-Mars opposition. And the 12th house is where everything kind of gets remade. So you could just see it. Astrology is like clockwork. You can just see it happen. Sure enough, Russia's the bad guy. Anyway, they're in a much longer cycle, but they're going through their Saturn return. It's happening right now. Happening right now. And that's going to be an interesting time because they actually became a country theoretically. I mean, they're always a country, but it's like, okay, we got this new thing, 1991. 1991. That 30-year cycle is coming to a close. And what's also interesting is that when Saturn was here in Aquarius, it's moved all the way around the chart. We got into the opposition. A lot of that Saturn and Cancer stuff. The Saturn and Cancer energy. That was around 2004. 2004. That was. I think that was an interesting time for Russia. They were trying to kind of, reset some things. I think that's when they were like kicking out the oligarchs, right? Or maybe that was a little bit before, but it wasn't that long before. But Saturn has basically gone all the way around the chart, and now it's been here when back in Saturn and Sagittarius, it was conjuncting Mercury and it was conjuncting Mars, and then we have the square to Jupiter here, which is in Libra. That's odd. Why that should be squaring? Let me just look at that. Yeah, Jupiter. So we have Cancer. That's Virgo. That's Jupiter and Virgo. Sorry. Yeah, so Jupiter is squaring Mercury. It is squaring Mars, and that's when all this stuff started getting drummed up again. And Jupiter and Virgo can be super critical. It's like heightening the critical nature of things. And then when Saturn went into Capricorn back in 2017, late 2017, and then early 2018, boom, Saturn hitting the sun. And that's when all this stuff with Russia was coming up. Mike Flynn and all that bullshit and Russian collusion, all here, right? All here. All that stuff was Saturn conjuncting Russia's sun, true node coming in, hitting Uranus. Well, Russia's through all this stuff now. They're through it all. They've got their Saturn return, which is happening now. And Saturn's going to go retrograde in June. I think it's June 20th. And it goes back to 6 degrees. It does not conjunct its natal Saturn. Right? And then it's moving forward. And once Russia sort of breaks free of everything, once it really breaks free of everything, it's going to be very interesting. Super, super interesting. Now, Uranus is up here, transiting Russia's 10th house. And they're going through getting ready to go through a Uranus trine. And that's going to be a time where things can speed up rapidly, especially potentially with technology in Russia. And a lot of people in the West say, "Oh, well, the Russians are way beyond." We don't know that, but they do have one of the most powerful missile defense systems in the world. It's the S-400. It's a ground-to-air missile defense system. It's almost impenetrable. They also, and again, this is conventional warfare, so they have hypersonic missiles that theoretically outclass our conventional warfare missiles, and they have them in Venezuela, by the way. They have them in Venezuela, and they could fire their hypersonic missiles and hit Miami probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. Seriously, that's how fast they are. And they wouldn't even know what happened. So Uranus is going to play a larger role in Russia's development here over the next few years, especially with the trine and then the trine to Neptune. The Uranus square, which is going to be coming up in about 2 years, to the ascendant, that's going to be a time when kind of enough is enough. Don't poke the bear. Because they're building, right? They're building. This is what they're doing. They have a different plan than China. China was favored and granted all the economic goodies by the West. Russia was not. Russia was given austerity. So they've had to do things in a bit of a different way. But once Saturn starts to rise here and begins to gain some momentum in Russia's chart, it's going to be their time is coming. Their time is coming. And Saturn from here to here is what, about 9 years? We've got 3 in Pisces, 3 in Aries, and then we'll round off the rest of Aquarius and then some of Taurus. So 9 years from now. That's a big time. That's 2030. That's when the world changes. And Russia's going to play a role. I'm telling you right now, Russia is going to play a major role in the pivot and the change of the planet at that time. It's a very pivotal time. And they will be at their peak with Saturn on their midheaven. And Saturn trining the Sun, and Saturn trining the true node, Saturn trining Uranus, Saturn trining Neptune, Saturn even beginning to trine to Jupiter. That's going to be a big time for Russia. But they're starting to separate now. They've gone through all the Saturnian challenges. And once they get into this opposition at 21 degrees, it's going to be at the end of 2021 starting. The end of 2022, rather, my bad. That's going to be an interesting time because they're going to be working on new partnerships, new relations, new contacts, new contracts. Also, keep in mind that China, their ascendant is Aquarius. It's a little bit different. I think China's ascendant is what, 1 or 2 Aquarius, and Russia's ascendant is Leo. So, you've got some interest. So China's sun is on Russia's Saturn. I'm sorry, take that back. Russia's Saturn is on China's ascendant. It's an interesting connection. And Saturn is just now hitting China's ascendant. It's a big time for China. Huge. Really big. So don't sleep on these 2 countries, especially Russia. They're in this for the long haul. Putin brought back the Orthodox Church because he wants a generation that has morals. A generation of morals. Theoretically, although I don't trust the Russian oligarchs, or the patriarchs rather. They're sort of the new oligarchs with funny hats. But that's a big deal because the Orthodox Church was banned under the former Soviet Union, and Putin says we got to get this thing back. We need to bring people back into the church. We need to give people an organizing principle. We need to give them some kind of moral code, and we need to give it to them for at least 30 years. And that's where they are now. They're getting ready to start their next 30-year cycle. And that 30-year cycle, we can even go back and look at, just look at it when Saturn was conjuncting their sun, right? And I bet you when Saturn was down here in Sagittarius, that's when they started to bring back the Orthodox Church. Although I don't have the exact dates associated with that, but I bet you it was right around here because it's religion. Anyway, they're not going to back or step down with Ukraine. That's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. And I think some of this stuff gets played out in terms of, nod, nod, wink, wink, nod, nod, wink, wink. Oh yeah, we're going to go to war, nod, nod, wink, wink. And some of it doesn't. I think some of it can be live. Just like how, gangs or tribes change allegiances on Survivor. That's what they do. And you may have something like, we're going to do this, right? Oh yeah, we're going to get this person out. Well, right, I'm good with that. I'm done. Okay, good. You good with that? I'm good with that. And then what happens? The person gets stabbed in the fucking back. And it's like, whoa, what'd you do? Well, we had to change things up a little bit, right? So this is what happens on a global scale, I think. And we're in kind of a precarious place because we have very weak leadership on the surface. Whatever's behind that leader is driving what's going on, and those are the neocons. In terms of foreign policy and war, it's the neocons, and the neocons are the Bolsheviks. In terms of what's happening domestically, with domestic policy, those are the social liberals. It's the worst of both scenarios. Some people are talking about Trump having his return. Mike Lindell, this is something which Mike Lindell said something interesting. I like Mike Lindell. He said Trump will be inaugurated on July 4th. July 4th this year, Trump will be inaugurated. I'm like, wow, that's something. That is something. So let's take a look, shall we, at Mike Lindell. Let's take a look at July 4th. Let's take a look at that day. Let me get into the ephemeris. I got to open a new window. I got a bunch of ephemeris stuff here I want to show you guys tonight. And I want to match this up with Trump's chart because I think Mars is going to play a role here. Pretty significant role. Okay, so July 4th, let's move ahead. On July 4th, Mars will be at 13 Leo. That means it's going to be, let me just go back here, up 4th, July 4th, yeah, 13 Leo. That means it's going to be on Trump's Pluto in his 12th house. Now, Mars will hit 28 Leo on the 21st. Let me just see here. 28 Leo on the 28th of July. And that's when the sun will also be in Leo. I mean, some people were saying that we would see the return of Trump with Mars in Gemini conjuncting his true node and his sun. That's quite possible. Because whenever Mars transiting Mars conjuncts your sun, you're gonna get a blast. Right? You're gonna get a blast of theoretical purpose, energy, all the things that go along with it. So that's possible. I'm more interested in that Mars transit through Leo, especially when it's in Pluto. And that's going to be, or especially when it's conjunct Pluto in his 12th house, behind the scenes, right? Now the 12th house is hidden enemies as well. But Mars is going to emerge. Now, also, Mars is going to have to go through and hit all those Cancerian planets. So I would say that if there's a chance that Trump would somehow come back to the White House, and I'm not promoting that, by the way. I'm not promoting, but if there was a chance, it would be with Mars. And it would be with Mars in Leo, ultimately hitting his natal Pluto rather, and then hitting his sun. I'm sorry, his ascendant at 28 degrees. Now, we could look at, because his sun is right around 21 Gemini, right? So we could look at Mars at 21 Gemini and see where we are with that. That's not that far away. That's April 8th. So let's see. We'll go April 8th through, let's call it the 18th. About a 10-day zone, 10-day window. A 10-day window. And let me just see if there's any other planets going on that would be interesting for him at that time. Now, I really think Mars, if we're going to see something with Trump, with Mars conjuncting the sun, it's going to be that 8th through the 18th period, right there. But I'm really looking at July. July, when that Mars is in his 12th house, that would be a time it hits his ascendant, and boom. There's something very active taking place there, super active. The other thing with Mars is that Joe Biden is a Scorpio, and that Mars in Leo is going to square his sun pretty early on. And I think that could be a deleterious effect for Xi Biden, that Sun Mars square. Now, the other thing too is we're on this timeline with Kali Ma Harris. And I think that if she's going to take over for Xi in the near term, it's going to be April 30th, because that's when transiting Jupiter conjuncts her natal Saturn. It was at 27 degrees, 28 degrees, right there at the top of her chart. It would be astrologically an opportune time. The other period where that could happen is, remember, Jupiter's going retrograde. So the other period that could happen or take place would be at the other end of that transit, and that would be where are we? Yeah, like August, the latter part of August. Yeah, but based on whatever condition president I saw somebody today said potatoes, like POTUS, but potatoes, like Mr. Potato Head, potatoes. So yeah, based on the condition of Mr. Potatoes. By the way, did you see Jill Biden in her hooker outfit? Holy shit, man, Jill Biden. Look, dress any way you want, but not a flattering look for Dr. Jill. Let me just say that. Okay. All right. Let's get into, what is this we have here? Let's get into Generation A. I want to talk about that. I've already been going for an hour and a half. Wow. I'm close to it. Okay, let's get into Generation A. And let me tell you why I think they're really significant. And again, I just coined them, Generation A. We got a nice little graphic here. So here you go, right there. So they're born 2008 to roughly 2024. This long cycle of Pluto and Capricorn. My God, how long has this thing been? Eons. They're the definition of old souls, these kids. And I've been watching them for a while. Like I look at them, I watch them, I see them in public. These kids, they know who they are. They're in their bodies. A lot of them are really in their bodies. I've noticed that about them. And my sense with them is that they're born complete. Like this is a group that are showing up. And it feels to me like every generation in some ways has the potential, because this is how this thing is supposed to work. Every generation is supposed to build on the next generation and the next generation or previous one, so that there can be this graduated sense of ascent. And I think that's true to some extent. We're also being initiated into a period of de-evolution and being taken backwards, which I've talked about. But these souls, I'm gonna call them souls, they're really interesting kids. They're born complete, meaning that they show up. That it's not as much about what they have to learn, but it's about understanding very rapidly who they are. And I call them the apostles of apotheosis. Apotheosis is like a zenith point. It's sort of this culmination. And they, to me, represent, Capricorn is this culmination. It's like the top of the chart. We start off with Pluto and Aries, which, by the way, is really where the country theoretically starts. Although we could make a case for Pluto in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus and the reset, which I'm going to talk about, by the way. We can make a case for that. But really, you have some very key figures that are born in Pluto and Aries. Key figures. And then the next sort of big group, the robber barons, are all Pluto and Taurus. But if we start off with Pluto and Aries, and we get to Pluto and Capricorn, we've gone through 3/4 of the Pluto cycle. And that means that we have one more Pluto cycle, actually 2 more Pluto cycles after this one in Capricorn. So we're going to go through Pluto in Aquarius. That starts in 2025. And Pluto cycles roughly lasting anywhere between like 16, 17 years. Since Pluto got demoted, it's like they don't treat it very respectfully. So it does not have a timely orbit like, say, Neptune or Uranus. We know that Uranus changes signs every 7 years. Neptune changes signs every 15 years. Pluto will hit and miss. So we're going to go through Pluto and Aquarius, and let's just say it's a 16-year cycle. That starts in really 2025. And then after that, we've got one more Pluto cycle. And that's Pluto and Pisces. And then we come back to Pluto and Aries, and that's really kind of the beginning. That's where everything sort of starts in the so-called modern era. And when we get to Capricorn, it's that culmination or the apotheosis. And everything's starting to shift now and move to the 11th house. Corporations are woke. They're woke. Corporations are woke. We're being ruled more by organizations and groups like the WHO. What is the fucking WHO? The WHO is a group. And I'm not talking about Peter Townsend and Roger Daltrey and John Entwistle and the late Keith Moon. No, the WHO is a global group. I mean, the WHO they're administrators. And they may invest in some kind of research or whatever. They have people that are advisors. And those advisors are connected to things like universities. But the WHO is a group. It's an 11th house entity. The United Nations is an 11th house entity. The CDC, which is theoretically part of the United States, I mean, it's part of the government, but it's also not part of the government. And it's kind of in that interface between the 10th house and the 11th house. So these are these groups, these are these collectives, these are these foundations. Trusts, Gavi, that's an 11th house, it's an 11th house entity. The Gavi Foundation, the Gavi Trust, 11th house entity. So everything's shifting to the 11th house now, which is the new form of governance. It takes us into the sphere of technocracy and out of the sphere of democracy, which is theoretically a 10th house thing. So this generation shows up, and they are the culmination point. And I call them baby Baphomets for a reason. Because number one, Capricorn is related to Baphomet. I can show you an image of Baphomet, and it is an old fucking goat. Okay? It's an old goat. And guess what else? It is unisex. It has male apparatus and it's got female apparatus, right? Male genitalia and female, not real genitalia, but organs, boobies, okay? And what are these kids going through? They are going through the most intense wave of sexual reassignment than any other generation. Any other generation, okay? Some of the Pluto and Sag kids are kind of getting it. But once the Pluto and Sag kids kind of figure out what's going on ideologically, and I've seen this, once they move out of their peer groups in high school, where they think it's also fucking cool to be trans, and they stop hanging out with the same people, guess what happens? All of a sudden, their lives change. And they're a lot less interested in being trans. This generation, however, does not get the same kind of, they don't have the same distance, right? Their parents are making decisions for them. Courts are making decisions for them. Desmond, the tranny dancer kid, right? He's this generation. Desmond is the face of this generation to a certain extent. Because this is the generation that's been targeted. They know who these kids are going to be. They are going to replace the builders of this world. And they don't want them to. They want them neutralized. They want them out of the picture. They want them neutered. They want them cut off. They want them isolated. And we can see what's happening to them. And a lot of what's going on right now is for them. For them. Think about how they're going to theoretically evolve here. Some of them, I'm sure, will be ripe for the picking. And this group will say, hey, look, we got these Pluto and Capricorn kids, and we could use a few of them on our side. And we've sufficiently traumatized them. Let's bring some of them in. And that happens with every generation. So they're the builders of the new world. When we think about them coming of age, and by the way, these kids, if they were allowed to reach maturity without a lot of the sort of intervention that we're seeing now, they would wind up being CEOs of companies at 18, 19 years old. They may not go to college. This generation might just opt out of college and start building things, start creating their own sort of, plank for the new world. Now you go back, and I went back and I looked at some of the people who are connected with being born during the last time Pluto was in Capricorn, and I did kind of a cursory grab of some people, and these are some very important people. John Jacob Astor would wind up being the first millionaire in America. John Jacob Astor. He's an incredibly influential person. Incredibly influential. And it's not just him, but it's the generations that come out of him. And he's not a great guy, by the way. He's not a great guy. Let me show you some of these people. Some of them you may know, some of them you may not know, but they're critical people. These are the people that, again, theoretically are going to shape the world to come. So let me get into this Rudolf Ackerman. He's a very, very interesting character. And I'll show you why he's interesting. Let me see what we got here. There we go. Why don't we get into John J. Astor a little bit? John Jacob Astor. Now, this is one of the Pluto and Capricorn patriarchs. Again, he's not a great guy. He's involved. I mean, if you back then, if you were trying to accrue wealth, there were clearly ways in which you could do it that were not how should we say, the most morally sound. Okay, so here we go. John Jacob Astor was a German-American businessman, merchant, real estate mogul, and investor who made his fortune mainly in a fur trade monopoly by smuggling opium into China. And by investing in real estate in and around New York City. He's known for being the first multi-millionaire businessman in the United States, Pluto and Capricorn. Really early, too, like I think 1 degree Pluto. Born in Germany, Astor immigrated to England. As a teenager, worked as a musical instrument manufacturer. He moved to the United States after the American Revolutionary War, because he's born in 1763. Right? And by the way, this is really getting into reset territory. 1848, 1849, 1850. Seeing the expansion of population to the west, he entered the fur trade and built a monopoly, managing a business empire that extended to the Great Lakes region and Canada, and later expanded into the American West and Pacific Coast. I think John Jacob Astor is one of the inheritors. He's one of the inheritors. If you know what I'm talking about, if you know what I'm talking about Tartaria and the buildings and the systems that were in place. Let's get a few little tidbits here. Astor's fur trading ventures were disrupted during the War of 1812 when the British captured his trading post. In 1816, he joined the opium smuggling trade. There you go. Shut down the furs. There's more products to be had. His American Fur Company purchased 10 tons of Turkish opium and shipped the contraband on into Canton on the packet ship Macedonian. Astor later left the China opium trade and sold solely to the United Kingdom. Yeah, the Chinese never forgot that. They were pretty fucking pissed off about it, and still are to this day. Hence, OxyContin, and even worse, fentanyl. Look at that. Junior was sickly and mentally unstable. Gee, I wonder why. Sister stillborn. These other Astors. Astor belonged to the Freemasons. Of course he did. They're inheritors. They are the inheritors. A fraternal order, and served as master of Holland Lodge number 8 in New York City, 1788. Later, he served as Grand Treasurer for the Grand Lodge of New York. He was president of the German Society of New York City, of the city of New York City. This dude was connected. Yep. And this is, they'll set the Russian-American company. Astoria, Oregon is named after him. Astor Place. Interesting. So that's one character, John Astor, who is huge. I mean, the America, let's face it, whether it's repurposing, as an inheritor, or monopolizing trade, or getting the Chinese hooked on opium, there isn't an America that we know it as we know it without John Jacob Astor. He's an important figure. And that's Pluto and Capricorn. All right, let me show you another one. One second here. Now this guy was, I thought this guy was interesting. This dude was interesting. Is this it? Let me just hold on. No. Let me do this. All right. Here we go. Yeah, there it is right there. Okay. So this is Rudolf Ackerman. Again, Pluto and Capricorn. He was an Anglo-German bookseller inventor. So this guy's actually pretty important in a lot of ways. He attended the Latin school in Stolberg, but his wish to study at the university was made impossible by lack of financial means. and he therefore became a saddler like his father. He worked as a saddler and a coach builder in different German cities. This guy becomes really important in terms of transportation. He moved from Dresden to Basel and Paris, and then 23 years old, settled in London. He established himself in Longacre, the center of coachmaking in London, and close to the market at Covent Garden. His extraordinary business instinct, as well as his flair for design and talent for self-promotion, won him a £200 contract, which was a lot of money back then, to design the ceremonial coach for the Lord Chancellor of Ireland, John Fitzgibbon, first Earl of Clare. After this, he designed the Royal Sailor, an 8-wheel omnibus that ran between Charing Cross, Greenwich, and Woolwich. Ackerman then moved to Little Russell Street, where he published imitations of drawings of fashionable carriages. To promote his coachmaking, other publications followed. An able artist in his own right, in 1795, he established a print shop and drawing school at 96 Strand. Ackerman set up lithographic press and began a trade in prints. He later began to manufacture colors and thick carton paper for landscape and miniature painters. Within 3 years, the premises had become too small, and he moved to 101 Strand, in his own words, 4 doors rear to the Somerset House, the seat of the Royal Academy of Arts. So he rapidly developed his book and publishing business, bringing together a wide variety of talented artists and printmakers, including Thomas Rowlandson, Isaac Cruikshank, John Bloch, Theodore Lane, Henry Simpleton, Maria Cosway. These are all very important people in publishing. So he's this guy that gets involved in the creation of carriages, carriage designing. He also he patented a method for rendering paper and cloth waterproof and erected a factory in Chelsea to make it. So he's making waterproof cloth, okay? Really important stuff. He was one of the first to illuminate his own premises with gas, which meant that, guess what? Workers could work longer hours. Indeed, the introduction of lighting by gas owed much to him. During the Napoleonic Wars, Ackerman was an energetic supporter of the Allied cause and made significant contributions to British propaganda through his publication of anti-Napoleonic prints and military manuals. He became a naturalized citizen. So this guy is important. He's important. He's an important dude. There he is, Rudolf Ackerman, 420. Why is he important? He's a pioneer in the world of publishing. Huge. Creates modern carriages and is the first to illuminate his own industrial premises. Huge. All Pluto and Capricorn. These people are creating the new world. This is what they're doing. Let me show you another one. This guy's kind of a character. He was the second millionaire in the United States, theoretically. So this is Pierre Lorillard II. Now, he was into tobacco. He was a huge tobacconist. He made a shit ton of money off tobacco. Now, it's not really his contribution to the world for being a tobacco peddler, but he's the second millionaire in the United States and also New York. So we're starting to see now assets begin to accumulate in New York. Just between him and Astor alone, there was a lot of money and a lot of resources available. So he was born on September 7th in Manhattan, New York City, 1764, the eldest son of at least 5 children born to Pierre Abraham Lorillard, who founded the Lorillard Tobacco Company. His big thing is snuff. He makes a ton of money on snuff. He was, again, he's not necessarily contributing to society in the way that Rudolf Ackerman is, by showing people how to light their facilities, creating things like waterproof cloth for their carriages, ramping up the publishing industry. He doesn't have that same kind of cultural impact, but he's got money, and his money begins to be moved through the infrastructure of New York City. And it was said that he was the first millionaire, but he's really not. He's the second millionaire. It talks about Pierre Home, one time mayor of New York City, wrote about Lallard in his famous diary. He was a tobacconist, and his memory will be preserved in the annals of New York by the celebrity of Lorillard's snuff and tobacco. He led people by the nose for the best part of the century and made his enormous fortune by giving them that to chew, which they could not swallow, snuff. Right. So here we have Jacob Astor being the first quote unquote millionaire. And yeah, so he's a very influential character. Him and Astor were in New York, which is the city of the New World. Let's see, who else do we have here? And I'm gonna go into some charts here. See, let me show you one of these other characters here. Yeah, Robert Fulton. We know about Fulton, Mr. Steam guy. This guy is really interesting. Another person born under Pluto and Capricorn, probably somebody you've never heard of, but highly influential. In the modern, we know it, has a lot to do with what this guy was able to develop and innovate. So his name is Henry Fourdrinier, and he was born in 1766, the son of a papermaker and stationer, and grandson of the engraver Paul Fourdrinier, sometimes mistakenly called Pierre Fourdrinier, with his brother Seely. He commissioned the development of the Fourdrinier machine, a paper-making machine that produced continuous rolls of paper. The machine is an industrialized version of the historical hand paper making method, which could not only satisfy the demands of developing modern society for large quantities of printing and writing materials. So we got a patent on this, and you're like, no, who knows? Maybe this was part of the cultural inheritance, and Henry Fourdrinier is sort of a version of Elon Musk, who knows? But based on the history here, this guy is responsible for this. A patent was granted on 24 July 1808 for a machine that could make a long and continuous web of paper. This had the dual advantage of considerably higher productivity, plus production in roll form for applications such as wallpaper printing. The range of cut paper sizes was also extended, as it was not limited by the frame or the decal size of handmade paper. This is huge. This is totally huge. He's basically setting up mass printing and mass for the 20th. So him and Rudolf Ackerman are beginning to lay the foundations for how people are going to get information transfer and knowledge. And there's plenty more of these characters, some of which you know. I talked about Fulton, Eli Whitney, the cotton gin, right? That guy, he's part of this Pluto and Capricorn generation that is laying the foundation, the work. And these are the people that would come of age after the Revolutionary War. They're born about 10 years or so, 1866, let's see, 1763, 64, so roughly 13, 14 years, sometimes like 10 years before the Revolutionary War. So by the time they get into their Hey, what's going on? Are we back here now? Are we live? We live. We're live. Okay. Hey, thank you again for hanging in there. You know, I always underestimate how much time some of these things take me. So I had this set up for uh, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I thought, okay, 2 hours. You know, I can't do a show in 2 hours. At least not on Sunday night. My mother's calling me. Why is she? Oh, she's off now. That's why she's calling me. Anyway, all right. So let's get back into this thing. Thanks for hanging in there. There are two videos, and you guys hung around, and you found the next source. So next week, by the way, next week this will be on robertphoenix.com, where all the astrology stuff goes down. I didn't have the tools to put that together tonight, and I know how to do it here on this site. The architecture's a little bit different, and I'm more familiar here than there. Anyway, next week it'll be on robertphoenix.com. Very few interruptions. And I hope you guys are liking chat, this version of chat. I hope it's okay for you. I know you guys really dig the YouTube chat, and it's a really good chat. And this isn't bad. It's better than the last chat that we had with this Boxcast, which I really like, by the way. I think Boxcast is great. And so we're just going to continue to evolve this. And again, thank you for your patience and your support. So here we go. I'm going to get into their charts now. Let's look at what was going on when Pluto moved into Capricorn. And I'll never forget when Pluto moved into Capricorn. I was like, man, I was like not into it. I was not into it. I could just feel it, it was just one of those things that I could feel. I was like, this is going to be fucking tough. Really, really fucking tough. And it has been. Let's make no mistake about it. Pluto in Capricorn has been incredibly trying for a lot of people. And let me just get my charts lined up here. And when I first started to experience it, sort of cyclically, and tried to translate it into astrological terms, I did a 9-part series called The Melting Economy, and looking at sort of where trends were going to go economically. And I think I got a lot of those right, by the way. We're talking about people moving back home with their parents, looking at the necessitation of that. I forget what else I wrote about, but it was like a really good. It was like, look, this is going to be a heavy time, and it still is. It still is. So let's get into when Pluto in Capricorn first shows up. So you're going to see these are titled like Gen A1, Gen A2, and they're for specific reasons. And you can see here that we have Pluto at 0 Capricorn. So this is really kind of a big moment. Pluto 0 Capricorn, 0, 0, 0, like it's there. It has arrived. It's 11:27. So we have the Sun in Sagittarius. And I think this is kind of an important chart. This is an important chart because this is theoretically, what the sky sort of looked like when the Pluto married the Lord of Darkness, embraced Capricorn. Think about that for a moment. It's kind of intense. The moon was at 29 Scorpio. At least it was at 12:01 a.m. in New York City on November 27, 2008. If you remember, by this time, Barack Obama had become president of the United States. And Pluto was in those final degrees of Sagittarius as Obama ran for office. And by the time he would become sworn in, Pluto would be firmly in Capricorn. and he would be the president that would usher in this time, a time of intense, deep, profound, uh, and in some ways terrifying change. Barack Obama was ushering in Pluto and Capricorn. It makes a lot of sense, actually, if you think about it. So we've got that moon at that 29th degree of Scorpio, which is, it's so balsamic, right? It is so fermented. And at that 29th degree of Scorpio it's kind of like, how would I describe it? We're looking for this something new. We're looking for something new. We're looking for kind of the Obama effect. And obviously, there's a different chart for the first Tuesday of November when the election was held. And there's a different chart for the inauguration. But this day, when Pluto moves into Capricorn, this day at the 29th degree, that moon is not in Sagittarius. It is not a new moon. It is not the beginning of something new. It is the fermentation, and in some ways, the putrefaction of a social emotional condition. Because that new moon in Sagittarius is about hope, it's about optimism, and in some ways, like that was sort of what was being sold with, well, it wasn't even some ways, it was like hope and change, hope and change, hope and change. When Pluto moves into Capricorn, and this moon at this anaretic degree, it is not about hope, it is about hopelessness. That 29th degree Scorpio moon, it's like, it's about death. It is about death. It's about letting go of the old and letting go of these old emotional attachments. And you can even see here that the moon is in square with Neptune, which is kind of a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal because Pluto is just going right into Capricorn. It's right there. This is an important time. It's a very important time. So we have this square with the moon. And the moon had been in square with Neptune for, the prior 24 hours. But when we get into that Neptune square, we're getting into serious codependency. And Neptune in Aquarius is really very Obama-like, super Obama-like. Okay, oh, wow, this is all hope and change, and isn't this great? And, how many people in the New Age community who were light workers and saw Barack Obama as this light worker? I remember, who was I was reading somebody, who was it? It was, God, it was, what was that guy's name? He's a columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. He was a Capricorn. I can't remember his name now. But he's one of these liberal assholes. I'm sorry. Not liberal in the good sense, but liberal in the bad sense. And I really had a hard time with this dude. And you could tell that he was, his star was rising at the time that Pluto was moving to Capricorn. And he was going to be San Francisco's kind of Herb Cain of Pluto and Capricorn. And he said, I know people who know a few things about a few things, and they say Obama is really special, that he's been sent here, and basically it was the light worker trip. And this is what we got with Neptune and Aquarius. But it's this moon here in Scorpio at this anaretic degree. It's putrefying. It's kind of fermented and rotten. And you may have moon at 29 degrees Scorpio in your chart, but I bet it's not anaretic. So this is about a lot of false hope and promise at this Pluto in Capricorn at 0 degrees. Now, what's really interesting is that, if we're looking at it from Saturn being the first planet we're going to encounter, going through this, the bottom part of the chart, the highest planet here is going to be Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius. And then we have Neptune right behind it, which is in the sign of Aquarius. So I think these are really important placements because these are the planets that are driving and defining this moment. It's all about Uranus and it's all about Neptune. They're the lead dogs in this procession, right? It's not quite a locomotive chart. It's not quite a bull chart. You've got this missing gap in Libra here. Now, this is when the first kids are being, oh, by the way, I want to throw some transits in here. Here's Saturn. Transiting Saturn's right there on the true node when Pluto goes into Capricorn for the first time. This is going to be a very interesting time with Saturn conjuncting this point of the true node. Now, kids that are born during this time, at least this period, some of them are going to start to get in 2009 when Saturn goes into Libra. They're going to start to get the first of these cardinal squares that are going to happen. Okay, the first of the cardinal squares are going to happen. They're going to happen starting in 2000. You're getting some of it here, just a brief taste, and it's just by degree, but it's going to get more pronounced as Saturn begins to move into square. It's just starting to come into square, even though Saturn's in Virgo. By the way, at this time, Saturn was conjuncting my sun. It was within 9 degrees of my sun. And it was conjunct my true node. And this is when I started to take off with astrology. It's right around this time. It's right around when I'm a little bit before this, when Saturn is crossing my midheaven. And I start to write about Sarah Palin, who's part of the McCain campaign, McCain ticket. That's when things begin to take off for me. So it's an interesting time in terms of my own life. But we're going to see kids now being born with Saturn squaring Pluto, and that's going to continue. Now, I want to focus on a very specific group of children, and that's in this next chart that I want to show you. Because these Pluto and Capricorn kids have had some form of conflict built into their insignificant conflict with outer planets. And I'll show you. And this is the one chart that really jumps out at me. Actually, it's the one before this. Yep. Okay. So this is from March 20th of 2011. Now, this is going to be 9 days after Fukushima happened. Remember, when we incarnate, like there are social and collective events that are part of our incarnation. So when I read for people who were born from, say, 1965 to about 1968, that 3-year period, that is like the height of the 60s, the height of the Pluto-Uranus conjunction in Virgo, summer of love. They're all incarnating with that vibrational frequency that was happening on the planet at that time. It is part of them. It's part of the air that their mothers are breathing. It's part of the tactile and the sensational world that their mothers are connected to via media, via the foods they eat, via the colors and the sounds that they're taking in. This is the imprinting upon the child inside of the womb. And that's part of the cultural vibration. And that's all being transmitted vis-a-vis the collective or the outer planets and the personal experience through the mother and her environment, her emotions, her thoughts, her feelings, and what she's taking in. And that's all astrological. Because you can see, like, if there's a hard Saturn transit, like a lot of the people in the mid-60s, 67, 68, 69, they've got Saturn in Aries. And you can go through and talk with some of them, and I do because they're my clients. And they've got some very interesting things going on, especially with things like their fathers with Saturn in Aries. Anyway, so what's happening here? We have Fukushima. And Fukushima takes place on 3/11. And that's when Uranus is just moving into the sign of Aries. We can see Uranus here. It's just moved, right? Just moved. Neptune in Pisces, it's about to follow suit. So by the time we get into April, Neptune's in Pisces. So we see these two major luminaries change signs in 1 year. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. It doesn't happen all that often. And Pluto is still pretty green. It hasn't even gotten out of the first decan. So immediately, and we can see here Saturn as well. Saturn is squaring Pluto. We see Saturn in Libra. And this is part of these T-squares that were going on during this time. Jupiter would eventually move into the sign. Look at the Jupiter conjunction here. It's kind of a wide conjunction with Uranus. But Jupiter would go through Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then we go into Cancer, and we would get into another version of these cardinal T-squares. And that would take place 3 years after that. So we're talking about 2014, end of 2013, beginning of 2014, big time. So how is this going to affect children born during this time? This is an important question, because I think that Uranus square to Pluto, which is kind of ongoing for at least half of that Uranian cycle. So we're talking about 2011 to like 2015, 2016. That Uranus-Pluto square is pretty intact. You got a group of kids who are going to be really fucking pissed off. I'm telling you. They're going to be really pissed off. And especially this group with Saturn, go back to even like earlier 2011, when Saturn's maybe about, 8 degrees, 7 degrees, Libra, really in that tight square with Pluto. Uranus, though not quite in Aries yet, still in square with Pluto, that T square, man. And then it moves in. This is going to be a generation that's going to be these kids will be really fucking pissed off. Really pissed off. And if I were them, I would be pissed off too. Because they're being massively targeted and fucked with. I'm sorry. That's what's happening. And I feel like, again, what I've tried to establish is some of this is, it's intentional. They don't want these kids to grow up, and they don't want them to get the tools. They know who they are. They know about these cycles, and they could go back and look at what was going on the last time Pluto and Capricorn. The foundations for the modern world were laid, and it was those characters that did it. Just like these kids could do the exact same thing, and they're taking a big risk by trying to, get into their sexual reassignment, because they love this idea of Baphomet. These kids being transformed into baby Baphomets. We're gonna hack your genitalia. We're gonna get you on hormone blockers. Now these poor kids, they're being taken out of their mother's womb, and they've got this plastic shield between them and their mothers. They're doing everything in their power to not only disempower these kids, but to be able to start to raise them in a way without any human contact. They want to get their hooks in these kids. They want to turn these kids into something else. That's what's going on. Now, this first group, this early group here, they're going to be fucking pissed. I'm telling you right now. And these kids are, they're 9 years old. 9 years old. Clock these kids in 3 years. Clock them in 3 years. Actually, here's what you want to do. You want to clock these kids when they go into the Saturn square to Pluto. The Saturn square. When Saturn goes into Aries, watch these kids who were born under Pluto and Capricorn. Watch what happens to them. Some of them, the first group's going to go through their Saturn opposition at 14. That's what happens at 14, 15. Yep, watch them. But even the ones that are early, when Saturn goes into Aries, so that'll be what 2025, 2026, 2026, 2027. Let's see. Let me just get in here. Hold on. Yeah, Saturn goes into Aries in 2026. So it's going to be February 2026. The big change is happening. Huge changes in 2026. Pluto will already have been in Aquarius. We have Neptune moving into Aries in 2026. Well, what is that going to do? That's going to square also these Pluto and Capricorn kids. It's going to square their natal Pluto. We've got Saturn moving into Aries. You got the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. That's huge. I could devote a whole show. And I've talked about that before. But then Uranus also moves finally. If I'm not mistaken, by the end of the year, Uranus moves into Gemini. It's not even the end of the year. It's early. Damn. So 2026 is a huge year. Uranus in Gemini, Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries. They're all changing signs that year. All those planets, those outer planets are changing signs. Huge, huge time. And it's going to have an impact on these kids. And they're going to be pissed off. They're going to be really pissed off. And I think that they have some of them, like the latter group who's going to have Neptune and Pisces. And some of them will have that Pluto-Neptune square, sextile, rather. And I would say that they may have some, kind of quote-unquote supernatural ability. Pluto Capricorn is really powerful. But these are the people, if you just look at that, right? You just look at that, that's like putting intense effort into these cardinal T-squares. This kind of configuration would be what would be required in some ways to actually build a new world. So 2026 is going to be very significant, super significant. And again, this is the now some of them will have gone through very serious changes, really serious biological changes. And that's going to be hard to witness, especially some of the ones who didn't agree to it. For a while, I was really fascinated with women who got in vitro fertilization. And wasn't just the women, but it was the kids. I was really interested in these kids. And it's really one of the most underreported stories of the latter part of the 20th century. And it's about these kids who, many of whom have a sperm donor father who have whose sperm has impregnated like 30 different women. I shit you not. And these kids are very confused. They're super confused. It's like, didn't you think about what it'd be like to have somebody like me? Didn't you think about how I would feel about it? Did you ever contemplate that I would have to like untangle the fact that I've got 30 brothers and sisters? and all of us, kind of share the same seed with this one guy who really doesn't give a shit about us. That's a really underreported story, by the way. A lot of these kids have very detached feelings towards their birth mothers. This is going to take that story and turn it on its head. Because what you're going to get and what we're going to get is we're going to get kids that have been changed, irrevocably changed, and at a very early age, and they're going to grow up and they're going to understand what happened. Now, some of them might be okay with it, and maybe they'll just go. I guarantee you, though, with these squares to Uranus and Pluto, remember now, Pluto is about generation, right? When we think of Pluto, we think about sex, we think about the 8th house, right there, bang. This is where we procreate. Second house is where we deliver. That's procreate right here. And then the consummation, the procreation is creation. It's birth. It's a second house. It's a second house deal. Earth, right? Second house, Earth. So Pluto is the ruler of the 8th house. And when we have something like Uranus, which is scientific, it's radical. Aries, it's about the will. Correct? It's about the will. And we see that these kids have been, in many instances, some of the later ones, like we're going to get into like 2014, which is only 7 years ago. These kids have been altered against their will. Not all of them. Not all of them. Now we get into this group who are 9 years old now. What are they going through? They're going through shit like having to wear a mask, get a vaccine. They may not be getting sexual reassignment. They may not be baby Baphomets, but they are getting hacked. Now, luckily, Pluto in Capricorn is freaking determined. So they'll probably get through this, but there's going to be some damage done to these kids. And just wait till they grow up. They're going to be pissed off, and they're going to be pissed off at the people that didn't protect them. So if you have a child, or somebody that has a child that's 9 years old, 8 years old, 7 years old, 6 years old, and they're going through mask hell, and they're going through whatever they're going through now, you should tell that parent that these children are going to be ticking time bombs. And when they get old enough, when they wrap their heads around what happened, there's going to be hell to pay. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I mean, look at this. There's nothing here in this chart that's remotely about release. Like, boy, that'd be a tough chart to be born on March 30th, 2011. That'd be a tough chart. But these kids will go through it. I hate to say it, but it's kind of part of their initiation. And they're going to get to an age where it's like enough. Not going to happen. We will never let this happen again. A lot of these kids, this is going to be their Holocaust. I'm telling you right now. You go back to when Uranus was in Aries, it was the run-up of the Third Reich. And that's when all the technology was being built for World War II. Okay, let me put up another chart here. Okay, so this is the July 2014 chart. Oh no, why did I bring this one up? Well, it was because of Jupiter. I wanted to show you Jupiter in Cancer. It's actually late Leo. It's late Leo, but we still have Pluto right here in Capricorn at 11. Oh yeah, that's when Pluto was conjuncting my Saturn. That was kind of a hard time. That was kind of an intense time. Let me see. Yes, definitely challenging time. Anyway, so there we go. There's Uranus again. Square, bang, right there. And Jupiter, we go back a little bit, like maybe about 6 months, even a little bit before that. So it'd be 2013. We had Jupiter in Cancer, right here. Jupiter in Cancer, and then part of that T square, right? And this is where we have the South Node also in Aries during that time. Man, that was a hard ass time. 2014, a hard ass time. And that's in July. July of 2014, July 20th. You go back early part of July when Uranus was a bit closer to Pluto, or even a bit later when Uranus was closer to that conjunction of the South. This is when a lot of the concussion stuff was starting to come up. The CTE stuff was starting to come up here. Also, if you go back and look at like 2011, you go back to that 2011 chart, well, especially like 2012, when Saturn is moving out of Libra, that's when it moves into Scorpio, and a lot of the sordid underworld shit that was going on with Jimmy Savile and Jerry Sandusky started to bubble. They started to bubble up with latter degrees of Saturn and Libra. But again, we see that the Pluto-Uranus square. I brought this up so you guys could sort of see it in action. And then earlier in the year, earlier in 2014 and part of 2013, boom, Jupiter-Pluto opposition, Jupiter-Uranus square, part of that series of T-squares that were going on with the cardinal signs. And I got one more here. This one, this was 2013. This was the 2013 chart when Jupiter was, okay, yeah. This is when there was this major kind of cardinal square going. I remember this. Venus was in Libra. But you can see, the reason I'm showing you these charts is you can see the squares to Pluto that were going on then, particularly Pluto-Uranus. And then here's what I was talking about with Jupiter. So this T-square with Jupiter was going on for quite a while, well, at least for better part of a year. So the Jupiter square to Uranus has a lot to do with kind of science, beginning to go too far, theoretically. And there's also this kind of, weird rupture of security in the bubble. And again, this is all kind of post-Fukushima. And then we have this Pluto square with, again, the Pluto-Uranus square still happening. And we can see that begin to happen in 2011. And it goes on for about 2015, 2016. But there's going to be permutations and variations and of these angles. So this little subgroup here is going to have that Saturn trine to Neptune, and then that Saturn trine to Jupiter. So whoever was born during this period, this day, interesting chart, no doubt. Very interesting chart. High tension, high stress, high challenge, really into relationships and power, but also understanding kind of the nature of flow, and very psychic, incredibly psychic here. Neptune, Chiron, Moon, all in Pisces, trining into Jupiter in Cancer, Pallas conjunct Jupiter, pattern recognition. This person would be a fucking psychic powerhouse right here. Dealing with power, this person would have to deal with power. But again, this was kind of in the air at that time. And this is also, the period where we're going through like WikiLeaks, starting to go through WikiLeaks. Julian Assange is starting to come on the scene. Edward Snowden would show up a little bit later. And we're into term 2 of Obama. And this is also the beginning, not right in 2013, but 2014, 2015 is when the BLM stuff starts to happen. And in 2015, I think we're starting to move into Ebola, some of the Ebola stuff. I could probably go back and really tear down what was happening. The generals. See, the other thing too, this Uranus Pluto square had a lot to do with also remaking the military. This is when Obama was firing, all the old guard generals and admirals. He dumped all those generals and admirals, and he ran that scam, the entrapment with Petraeus, with Michael Petraeus. And that was interesting, right? Because they were running 2 programs simultaneously. Petraeus has this affair with this chick that looks like she's she's a spy. We know she's a spy. They were like working on this book together or something. Yeah, he has an affair with his wife. But at the same time, they're also purging all these major commanders. So we're focusing on the scandal with the Petraeus affair, but Obama's wiping out CENTCOM, AFRICOM, and putting his people in place. That really hasn't changed. And that's all happening here with this Uranus-Pluto square. That's what's going on. So I'm going to put a wrap on this. These kids, I think, have a hard road ahead of them. But if they're going to be the ones that are going to be the builders of the new dawn, or they're going to be the ones that are going to, erect the new civilization, long after a lot of these baby boomers are gone, they're going to be gone. And it's going to be these Pluto and Capricorn kids who've gone through all this trauma that are going to be the ones that are going to be kind of there. And they signed up for it. These are really interesting kids, but they're going to have a lot to go through, and they're going to have a lot of challenges to overcome. But I think they're up for it, and they're going to have the Pluto and Sag kids to kind of lay the foundation for them. The spiritual and the philosophical framework is going to come through the Pluto and Sag kids, who have Uranus and Neptune conjunction in Aquarius, and those kids are starting to have Saturn hit their natal Uranus, hit their natal Neptune. You're going to start to see them come online, and some of them are going to push back on the program, the Divide and Conquer program. Okay, I think I'm good for tonight. Thanks for hanging in there and being a part of part 2. And let me just check in with you guys chat-wise. I hope everything turned out accordingly. Yeah, we got some good stuff happening there. All right. Okay. I'm out of here for tonight. Thank you. I'm going to try to play with chat a little bit so that we can maybe have it next to. I know some people want it like it next to the image, to the screen, to the recording, right, to the stream, so they can watch and listen and chat at the same time. I'll work on that tomorrow. I'll see if I can configure that. Okay, so I've gone for almost 3 hours tonight. If you've purchased a reading, hang in there. I will get to you, I promise. I've just been completely inundated with stuff. And there are days I can't even get to my email. But I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm just telling you. Okay? All right. So I'll be back here on this website tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, or Central Daylight Time now. So I'll be back here, 15 minutes of flame. Come be a part of the show, be part of the proceedings. And we could even do some stuff this week. Maybe we can figure this out where I can somehow, like, if you want to get on Zoom with me, you want to talk or rap, you want to get on a Zoom call, let me know ahead of time, or You know, I can shoot you an email. We'll work on that this week. Maybe I'll bring some people live into the show, and we can talk. That might be a cool thing. And even next week, you know, I can start to bring some people in and do some live astrology, and you know, we can play with that too. I used to do a lot of that. Okay, use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart, right there, to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You are you, and just, you know, try to do your best to stay out of the fray. That doesn't mean you check out. It doesn't mean you check out. Stay out of the fray if you can. We have some really, really choppy seas ahead of us from the global perspective, with Ukraine and Russia, which I think is probably going to go hot. Remember, we're in Aries month. We are in Aries month, and it is a very martial time. Whether it's that stuff, or whether it's you know, the ongoing control program for the infusion, for the passport, for the mask, whatever it is, let's do your best to vibrate above it, however you're going to do it. If you have to engage, but do it mindfully. And if you're going to kick ass and take names, make sure you take no prisoners. All right. Love you all. Use your head in order to discern what's really hard, what's impossible, which I said already. I'll be back here tomorrow. Take good care. This is Robert Phoenix. Bye for now.